A group of more than a dozen prominent conservative lawyers from the Federalist Society are urging their fellow conservatives to speak out about what they call the Trump administration's betrayal of the bedrock of legal norms. The group calls themselves Checks and Balances, and two of their members join us now, Senior Associate at King and Spalding, Marisa Maleck, and a former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and former Senior Counsel for the Ken Starr investigation, Paul Rosenzweig. He's now a professorial lecturer in law at the George Washington University. Good to have you both on board. Marisa, I'll start with you. You're conservative lawyers. Why was this necessary?
There are so many reasons why this was necessary. Right from the beginning, I was part of a group who signed a letter called Originalists Against Trump, and I was really concerned because this guy has been running for president since the early 2000s, has switched parties, for as long as he's been able to vote, essentially. I was really concerned about, his principles, whether or not he had any, and he soon proved to have very little. And what you've seen is him really corroding legal norms and the rule of law, between talking about birthright citizenship, which is clearly unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, to his newest appointment of the acting attorney general, which needs Senate confirmation. He has normalized ignoring legal norms, and it's time for someone to speak up against it.
I'm wondering, Paul, if for you, early on in the administration, when the president questioned the legal authority of a Republican-appointed federal judge in Washington state, if that wasn't when a lot of alarm bells went off for you. It certainly was for me when, I think the first time, at least in my lifetime, I remembered a president of the United States actually questioning the authority of a federal judge because he didn't like the outcome of the case.
I think that's right. Everybody has their own breaking point in this story. For some of us, it's more recent. For me, it's gone back quite a while. The incident you referred to, a president essentially saying that the independent judiciary should not be independent, is truly a transgression of the separation of powers, the concept of checks and balances that is at the core of our group's activity. Likewise, interference in criminal investigations, suggesting that the Department of Justice should investigate your political opponent or not investigate your political allies. Those sorts of things are beyond normal. They're beyond the bounds of what is normal political discourse and normal political disagreement, and they really strike at very fundamental values of American society.
Marisa, I wonder, and I'm sure you've had, you clerked for Clarence Thomas. I'm sure, like me, you grew up with a lot of Republican friends and a lot of Republican family members who wonder why you didn't fall blindly in line for Trump. Is there
I actually didn't. I actually have Democrats as parents. I just happened to read Ayn Rand when I was 12, and I was utterly corrupted early on.
Oh my God, I love it.
Well, you know what? So your last 2 or 3 years have been easier than mine at family reunions. Okay, well, be that as it may, I wonder if you've noticed, let's say among your friends in Washington, if you have conservative friends in Washington, that it's usually the lawyers that understand a little bit more, that when I start talking about the breaching of constitutional norms, and I start talking about the president not respecting the power of the federal judiciary, and I start talking about Madisonian checks and balances, a lot of my friends' eyes glaze over. It seems conservative lawyers, though, that I talk to seem to get it a bit more and understand why, even if a guy's cutting taxes and appointing people to the Supreme Court that you may like, it's still not enough if somebody's breaching constitutional norms.
I totally agree with that. What's a little concerning is I do think people look at him and say, well, look at all these judges, we're really shaping the judiciary, let's sort of ignore it, he's just sort of blustering. But his words have legal effect. When he tweets something, people respond. And to me, it's not enough to just sort of say, well, we have Justice Kavanaugh, we have Justice Gorsuch, so there's nothing to see here. There's plenty of things to see. When you start corroding constitutional norms over time and switching our dialogue about it, all of a sudden we don't have a functioning democracy anymore.
Yeah. Let's go to John Meacham. John's going to likely ask you to what Supreme Court decision under the Tyler administration had the most far-reaching impact on us today. Mr.
I
Meacham.
hope no one asks me that question.
I thought we'd throw a little Edmund Burke around because it's that kind of morning. But I do have Marisa, what you just said rings so true to layman's ears as a non-lawyer. It is the riddle of the age to some extent as to why 40% or so, 45% of the country has suspended really the whole Jeffersonian capacity for reason to play a role in public affairs. The triumph of tribalism at the moment is you pick a team and then you're for that team no matter what. You're actually arguing, it seems to me, that Americans have a role to be umpires in politics and in life. You call balls and strikes as you see them. I know this is the work you're undertaking, but do you have an analysis of why so many people on the right who are wonderfully read, who do believe in the rule of law, have suspended their capacity to criticize this president and hold him to account?
A lot of them are in the administration. I mean, at least in D.C., a lot of my friends, I'm 33 years old, a lot of my friends are getting very plucky jobs in the administration, so it's not in their interest to speak up against it. A lot of people are also, I think, afraid because the president has showed himself as capable, more than capable, of tweeting against individuals. And I think they just don't want to get on his bad side.
Hey, Paul, it's Willie Geist. One of the principal techniques of President Trump, not just President Trump, but candidate Trump and Donald Trump before that, is to attack the source of information. So when a judge rules against him in Trump University, he says that judge has Mexican heritage and can't possibly be fair when considering this case. We talk a lot on this show about the institutions and whether or not they can stand up and hold against one man like Donald Trump. In your assessment of these first couple of years, have the institutions held, particularly in your area in the Justice Department?
I would say that the institutions have held, but they're under stress. One of my friends likes to say that the guardrails of democracy are buckling. They're still solid, but they are under great pressure. The career prosecutors at the Department of Justice, even the Trump appointees, Attorney General Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, have been under tremendous pressure from the president to deviate from normal activity. And thank God for them. They've withstood the test so far. That's one of the reasons why the appointment of Acting Attorney General Whitaker is so potentially problematic. It may signal a further buckling of that institutional barrier against misbehavior, that the Department of Justice is about doing justice, not about doing what's politically expedient.
Paul Rosenzweig and Marisa Maleck, thank you both. It's great to have you on.